Hello, and welcome to the first of my videos about revisiting Wishbone, the little dog who's read more than, maybe not you, but most people. Um, I am only doing 2 episodes. Fortunately, the first episode of Wishbone, the first book that Wishbone tackles, it tackles as a two-parter. And but I'll get around to doing probably 4 at a time after I finish recording my other December starting project, which is I've already posted some reading A Christmas Carol over the course of 25 YouTube videos to be released over the course of 25 days, and I don't think I need to say why. But I've put them in a playlist, and I will keep the playlist updated. Past playlists I've done after everything's all from that set is all done, and then I make it a playlist. I'm making it a playlist as I do it because I understand then that it's easier, and you don't really need to watch looking back at Animorphs sequentially. But if you want to have part 1, part 2, part 3 of A Christmas Carol read go by without having to keep clicking on new things, I figured this is easier, and that's a way to get people to actually watch them. I am excited to be revisiting Wishbone because, as I think I mentioned in my last Space Cases video, Wishbone was my first exposure, and I got my notes on one side, the book on the other. I figured this is a good way to keep it so that it's not just me in the frame, and also that you can't see the crossed out notes on the back of the page. Wishbone is not the only reason, but a big part of the reason that I was curious enough to make it a goal to read all those books on the 100 novels to read before you die lists. And at the time I was watching Wishbone, I had read none of them. And by this point, I will find out, but I'm pretty sure I've read at least most of them, including The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. I had read other Twain. I had read short stories. I had read Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court and The Prince and the Pauper. I got Life on the Mississippi back there. I was going to read it this spring, but I was going to read it this spring while, visiting a river or something, and that didn't pan out. Something else that I don't need to say why. But I'll read it soon. I look forward to it. I understand Twain is a great essayist, and I've never read any essays. But I think it's probably the most appropriate that Wishbone would have started with the quintessential Americana novel, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. It's in a two-parter, like I said, a tale in Twain, parts 1 and 2. And it's actually, as I observed when I was blogging about it, and I'll put my blog post about this book and any other books that I have read in the description below with each video. It starts off with a very Atlas Obscura angle. Now, Atlas Obscura is a website that I briefly wrote for about finding hidden wonders around the world, and the first episode of Wishbone, echoing the story of Mark Twain, Joe and David and Sam, the kids, they go off and they find or search for the no-name grave, which is a supposed grave for a person in the middle of a park that legend has it could be this, it could be that. Of course, none of the legends are true. And I was watching it this time through, and I was thinking, there's no way that a city park would allow a unmarked grave known to have a body buried in it to be available to people. There are memorials in parks around New York City. They are protected. You can't dig up the bodies, and so it's cute. I like it. Maybe in the mid 90s, late 90s, it was more likely, but I doubt it. But again, it's for the purposes of so that they can go on an adventure like Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. I guess I'll go down my notes at this point. The kids, as I mentioned, Joe is Wishbone's boy. And David, we get established, is one of Joe's friends. We first see him beating a video game, and very excited to be beating a video game. He is the cautious, nerdy, geeky one. Sam, while we don't really see it in this episode, except for the signaling of she's wearing a baseball cap, her ponytail is pulled out through the over the adjuster, and she's wearing a baggy button-down shirt and slacks. She's the sporty one. And Joe is sporty too, and David can, but I think that's her character. And then the two main adults are Joe's mom, Ellen, and their neighbor, Wanda, who is involved in the Historical Society. I think they both are, and Ellen is the reference librarian at the local library, because, of course, the show is about books. So there's that. Wishbone introduces us to everybody, introduces us to the how hungry he is, how he always wants to snack, and introduces us to the clue to the secret of the no-name grave by going around and burying his treasures. In many of the Wishbone episodes that I remember, we have an opening where we establish what Joe's mission or personal story is going to be, what it's going to revolve around. And then Wishbone paws at a bookshelf and knocks out whatever book it's going to be. In this one, in the first one, I noticed Joe has his copy of Tom Sawyer, a nice purple hardcover, and he leaves it on the couch when he gets up to go to the park. What is it? Jackson. I wrote down the park name somewhere. It is a park name inspired by Mark Twain and then Tom Sawyer. I'll get to it when I get to that in my notes. But he's bored. He's got 1 week left of summer. He wants to have an adventure, and his mom suggests he goes to the park. And so he leaves, and he leaves his copy of Tom Sawyer right next to Wishbone. And Wishbone says, Joe sounds a lot like Tom Sawyer, which is how the transition into the period drama begins. Each of these episodes is a miniature period drama with a framing device of contemporary childhood. Or maybe it's vice versa, contemporary childhood with the framing device of period drama. Either way, a bunch of great little masterpiece theaters in these Wishbone episodes. But I did wonder, had Joe been reading Tom Sawyer? Was it his summer reading? Had he waited until a week before school to do his summer reading? It's not a long book, so he could have. Let's see here. Wishbone. Let's see. What does that say? I'm not going to try to read that. Was someone... Oh. So, Wishbone has a voice. At some point, I will write down in my notes and not have to look up on my computer who that voice is. When he's in with Joe, when he's in the real world, the humans can't hear him speak. But when he's playing Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn has to be able to hear him speak. So I just wondered, I wrote down, was someone speaking his lines? Probably on set, someone was speaking his lines, whether it was the actor himself or, and then it was done in voiceover later so that it would be clearer. But this show, I was thinking, as I often do, when I rewatch episodes after I read a book, and I'll mention Homeward Bound: The Incredible Journey. Great arguments in favor of not completely giving up on using real animals and trying to get performances out of real animals. There was that Harrison Ford movie with dog, Call of the Wild or something like that, and computer animated dog with expressive face, that making faces that a dog wouldn't necessarily make. But the way that there's an art, I suppose it's editing art, but also training art to getting a great performance out of a real animal. And there are a lot of great performances, a lot of great moments in every Wishbone episode, just like there are in Homeward Bound: The Incredible Journey. So I was watching this and I was thinking, I hope that they're still doing it or that they will start doing it again. Crafting great performances out of live animals. Let's see. Wanda gets introduced by, she digs up, as she put it, something in her garden that she did not plant. one of Wishbone's squeaky toys. Um, and oh yes, by the end of the Tom Sawyer portion, the period drama portion of the episode, we have met the character of Joe, who is referred to as Crazy Joe. And when I heard that, I thought, that's not how he's referred to in the book. I can't be sure, but I looked through my blog post and I found he is referred to as a couple of things in the book, but of course, in a children's show, you would not want to say those things out loud. And Wishbone very wisely, and it kind of does this in different ways, in different, which I will notice now that I've actually read the books, kind of not sanitizing, but, you know, adapting these for children. And I think that's a great thing, and we need that sort of thing, little period dramas for children. I don't have children, and I'm not a children, so I don't know what's out there now. I hope that there's something like Wishbone, and if there's not, that someone calls me and says we need to do something like Wishbone for today's youth. Those were all of my notes for part 1. So part 2, I just wrote that the series itself starts with a bang. The kids seem to be in real peril. I suppose they're never actually in real peril because they're in the real world. They're not in the kind of peril that Tom and Huck are from Joe, Crazy Joe. But we think that they're in peril because they go to the park, Joe, David, and Sam, and they go to the no-name grave, and they find someone digging it up, which, again, is why a no-name grave wouldn't be allowed by the city of Oakdale in the first place, but they think there's a person who's a little defensive about it, digging up a body, and they flee. And when they tell Joe's mother about it, Ellen, one would think they might go to the cops if someone's digging up a body, but not in Wishbone, because that would take the plot in a direction that's not useful. Ellen and Wanda follow them back into the woods, back into the park, to investigate. But before that, there's an episode the night before when Joe tells his mother about it, and he seems genuinely disturbed by what he saw. And so I wrote down a pretty intense, feelings for a children's show. I suppose it's a slightly different take than the movie Stand By Me, based on the Stephen King book Stand By Me, or something like that. The kids run away initially when they see him, and Joe is genuinely disturbed. Tom and Huck, they witness a murder, and they do not seem as disturbed. They are younger kids in a different time, and being written from the perspective of Mark Twain. So I don't know exactly what that should mean, but that's how it manifests. It just was notable that Joe only thinks he saw something really disturbing, and he's really disturbed. Tom and Huck, they actually saw something disturbing. They're less disturbed. Let's see. One of the obstacles to get to the no-name grave through the park is to swing across a small brook, and despite the fact that they witnessed something disturbing, or they thought they witnessed something disturbing the day before, they still do the yippee thing when Sam, David, and Joe swing across the thing, the brook. They have fun. So again, it's a kids show, and Space Cases and Animorphs, technically kids shows. This is a really kids show, and so it's not going to be too intense, but again, it's you revisit things when you're older, when you've read the book, and you see it a little bit differently, and it's interesting. Let's see. Oh, and when they get there, and this is, I think, is I don't know for sure, but it seems to often be the case in the episodes that I've rewatched, that it is Joe's mom, Ellen, who steps forward when they are confronting something disturbing. In this case, the guy who was digging up the grave. She's the one who goes forward and says, "What are you doing?" And then he explains. And it's a very nice, I think I won't say exactly what it is, but it ties into the idea of Atlas Obscura and hidden treasures and hidden um, wonders, and knowing, or no, I'll say it. So the guy, his ancestors, when they were settling the land that became Oakdale, they tried to start a farm where the park is, and ultimately they couldn't do it. They had to leave, and they couldn't take a lot, so they buried their nice things, their valuables, in the hopes of coming back, and they were never able to. But the story was passed down to this guy, and he came back um, to dig it up. And there's a nice violin. There's what looks like an interesting little cane. So it's and I found myself thinking I should bury a time capsule as I'm watching this episode. I've tried in the past, and then I've dug them up, or I shouldn't have buried them where they were, and I never buried them deep enough. I think there are a couple of time capsules that have been associated with like classwork in early grade school, and I know that there's one at the school in the wall of the gymnasium of the school I graduated from, but I want to do my own. And this stuff goes back to the 1840s. So, yeah, it's a great message there. And then the show ends on a note of buried treasure has been found, both in the Tom Sawyer version and the real world version. So I think I found some things that I wouldn't have otherwise found if I hadn't read the book. So I'll let it go there for now. I don't know what the next I think the next one is Oliver Twist, because I remember making a note of it when I read the books back to back, and I noticed when I looked up the Wishbone episodes that they had started with the two quintessential little boy comes of age, rags to riches stories in classical literature. So I hope that was an interesting account of Wishbone episodes, and I hope that I do more of them. So if you have a favorite Wishbone episode, or you want to point out something that ties the book to the episode that I did not notice, please comment. And if you want to get into the Christmas spirit, watch, but really more listen to my videos where I'm reading a Christmas Carol. I almost said a Christmas story. That's still copyrighted, and it's not a book, although it was originally short stories, I think. My videos of A Christmas Carol, I have done 13, I have posted 3, and I will continue up until, the day. So, wag another tail.